everybody, it's Romania Black, and welcome to the 2023 edition of the Top Husbando and Top Waifus. So, if you're new to this on the channel, last year, back technically in the fall of 2021, I went on Patreon and asked fellow patrons to nominate their favorite waifu and husbandos from anime and manga and donghua and donmai that I have personally read and watched on my channel. And I showed my anime list to show them which series I had watched or which series I had read. And so in 2022, around the time of the American NCAA March Madness, I started doing videos narrowing down bracket style the top husbando and waifu nominations. Why? Because brackets are fun, March Madness is fun, and husbando and waifus are fun. So why not combine them all together, right? And this year, we're going to be doing it again. So back in December of 2022, I did nominations. I had so many nominations for husbando and waifus. So many. We had to do like a series of polls on Patreon to narrow it down. It was that crazy. So there were a lot that didn't make the list. There were some that made it several rounds in to last year's competition that didn't make the cutoff. The competition was that fierce. And so, as per usual, thank you Patreon, thank you patrons. I'm so excited to do this again, but I added an extra step because I am cruel to myself. Last year, I chose the criteria for which each round was judged. This video here will narrow down our top 64 husbandos and waifus to our top 32. And last year, I picked the criteria and I assigned them to each round and just picked based on that. And we had tiebreakers, things of that nature. This year, I thought, well, why not let patrons choose the criteria? What makes your husbando and waifu? And I have instantly regretted that decision. Basically, what I'm saying is patrons chose the order of this bracket and they chose the criterion. I am not responsible for the upsets that are going to happen in this bracket. And y'all, there are going to be some upsets. So, right off the bat, so I hope y'all are ready, but we're going to get started with this. I'm so excited, y'all. I cannot wait. I've been excited to start back. Now, one quick ground rule. The winners of last year, their husbando and waifus are not eligible to compete in this year. So last year, our top husbando was the beautiful Hawk from Yona of the Dawn. And last year's top waifu was Yona of Yona of the Dawn. So our beautiful couple from that series, they are sitting out this bracket. They are not allowed to enter because they've already won. They have secured their spot in the Husbando Waifu Hall of Fame. At least for now. Like every 5 years, I may let them come back in. Who knows? Or maybe every 4 years. Who knows? If we're still doing it by then. But yeah. So this year, it's going to get interesting because we not only have husbandos that are also on the waifu bracket, but we have waifus that are also in the husbando bracket, and patrons chose the criterion. So let's get started. We have our top 64 husbandos narrowed down to our top 32. So looking through the criterion, we had a lot of suggestions from patrons of what makes the perfect husbando and waifu. So many criteria, in fact, that I had to actually apply 3 criteria to this one round. We had so many to choose from. Technically 4. So we're going to call them sections A, B, C, and D. Section A is going to be in every single round. It was universally the one criteria that every nominee put literally on their ballot. And that was a husbando or waifu must be aesthetically pleasing. They have to be attractive, got to be good looking. Luckily, everyone fits the bill for being aesthetically pleasing in this competition. So that's an instant check for every competitor coming into this competition. But as for the other ones, I tried to find criteria that were not only similar, that could match up together, but also that kind of fit the round they were talking about. So we'll see how this goes. But for this first round, I thought, well, I want to pick some criteria that could apply to all of our competitors in general and throwing kind of a squirrel aspect, one that's going to throw off and make things a little interesting. So obviously, the husbando or waifu has to deep down have a good heart. You know, that your future partner should have a good heart deep down. They should be protective of their partner because that's what a good husbando and waifu does. And then I chose to add kind of a wild card element to like be a tiebreaker. Lots of Patreon members chose that they wanted their husbando and waifu to be a bad boy or a bad girl. And that's great. admit I like a good bad boy every now and then, but I was like, I didn't want the bad boy and bad girl criteria to be way down like in the semifinals or finals, because then we're getting down to the nitty gritty. And do we really want our husbando and waifu to be a bad boy and bad girl in the long run? In the long run, maybe not. So I chose, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. We'll just do it in the first round. Knock a few people out, right? Y'all are gonna hate me. Because this was the worst decision I could have ever made. But I can't go back now. I was committed. I had decided my criteria for each round. I had sat down. I was ready to go. I wasn't backing down. And as I started going through this bracket, I had instant regrets. But disclaimer, I did not choose these criteria. And as far as the bracket seating goes, these were based on nomination and votes. So how this bracket seating worked is not my choice. I based it entirely on Patreon nominations and poll rankings. So some of these categories you'll be like, that person against that person. Really? Really? So let's go ahead and get started, y'all. The top husbando. Aesthetically pleasing, a bad boy, has a good heart deep down, and a protective partner. A, B, C, and D. Let's do this. We're going to start with our very first number one seed. Number one seed this year is not surprising, but y'all should have seen it coming. People are going to try to get a Reagan sweep out of this. It is Reagan Arataka from Mob Psycho 100 versus Sosuke Yamazaki, the 16th seed from Free Iwatobi Swim Club. I'm very sad that there were not a lot of free members that made it on the bracket this year. And what's even more heartbreaking is the ones that did are up against some really tragic competitors. So again, gonna base it on the bracket, base it on the criteria. These are just, as being as objective as can be, because I have my own personal favorites, and I'm gonna tell y'all, I was heartbroken with some of these decisions that had to be made. Heartbroken. But if we look at this objectively, Reagan Arataka and Sosuke Yamazaki are aesthetically pleasing, of course. We're going to just give everybody an automatic A in terms of that on the board. So in terms of being a bad boy, Reagan is a con man. So, and this is going to be another thing too. There be spoilers going into this bracket. There's going to be some spoilers. So if you've not watched these series or seen these characters, you might want to go ahead and skip ahead if you think that this might be a problem. But there will be some minor spoilers. Once we get down to like the semifinals and finals, there'll probably be more spoilers. But for this first round, I'm going to keep as concise and as broad as possible. But Reagan Arataka is a known con man. You know that from the first episode about him. That's a bad boy, right? Sosuke Yamazaki is not a bad boy. He's not really. He comes across that way, but he really isn't. He's a big teddy bear. He just looks intimidating. But nothing career-wise about him would suggest he's a bad boy. So I hesitate to say bad boy for him. I could see some people saying that Reagan's not a bad boy, so we'll just give it to them both, just to be fair. But as far as caring for others and having a good heart deep down, both characters have a good heart deep down, and both are protective of their partners in various ways. So theoretically, it was very hard to differentiate in this first round between the two because they both match up to that criteria. So I decided for this first round, if there was a tie, I would go with whichever Patreon voters had voted for more, and they would advance to the next round. I'm not going to do that for every round. Hopefully, we're going to get down to some criteria that will set characters apart. But for this first round, I said my tiebreaker would be Patreon votes. And Patreon is just dead set on Reagan Arataka being a sweep. So for this first round, Reagan, because he's our number one seed, sadly, as much as I love Sosuke, Reagan is going to advance on to the top 32. Now for this next round, we have Sasaki from Sasaki and Miyano versus Lan Jishin from Modao Zushi. Lan Jishin got very far last year, but Sasaki was not on the bracket at all. So we have a new player this year. In terms of both being aesthetically pleasing, obviously. Now, Sasaki keeps, he doesn't seem like a bad boy, but he gets that reputation. So I kind of put like a little question mark by the B. Like he's called a bad boy, but he's not really. Jishin is not a bad boy at all, right? Not a bit. Now, both are very good in terms of having a good heart deep down. and both definitely want to protect their partners to a major extent. I would say that Sasaki is more protective of his partners than Jishin is. Jishin, we don't ever get really a confirmed partner for him in the series. It's just, there's lots of fan theories of who they want to ship him with, but with Sasaki, it's pretty definitive over who he's being paired up with. It's pretty much an OTP, right? So because it's pretty much an OTP, and because he has the bad boy persona over Jishin, sadly for our Mode Azushi fans, Sasaki is going to advance on to the top 32. Also, he had more votes. Barely. He was our 8th seed over our 9 seed, so he would have advanced anyway, even if it was a tie. Some of these picks on the bracket were easy outs last year because I barely knew them, and they only made it on the bracket because they were from shows that I technically had watched, but I didn't know their characters very well. This is a prime example. Tengen from Demon Slayer versus Hatsuhara Soma from Fruits Baskets. Lots of Fruits Basket characters on this bracket, which is a shame because I've not seen Fruits Baskets or read it in years. So I had to kind of go off with what I remembered from these characters. But Tengen, finally seeing season 2 of Demon Slayer this year, I have such a better appreciation of his character. I was so happy he made it on the bracket because I feel like now I can do his character proper justice because I've seen the series. And so Tengen, a bad boy, yeah, I mean, he's not technically, but he has the bad boy attitude, right? Same with Hatsuhara. He has that like persona of being the bad boy. And both of them having a good heart deep down and very caring of their partners. The thing is, Tengen's got 3 people he is deeply caring for. Hatsuhara, he's got 1. Does a good job of caring for him, but Tengen times it by 3, baby. So for that reason, and because he's our 5 seed, Tengen is going to go on and make it to the top 32 of our Husbando bracket. He made it past round 1. Sorry, Hatsuhara, but I'm really excited Tengen is making it on deeper into the bracket. Hooah! Our next round is a rough one. Wei Wuxian from Mode Azushi versus William Moriarty from Moriarty the Patriot. Oof. This one's hard, right? Because both boys having the bad reputation, right? The Yeeling Patriarch, and then obviously Moriarty. I mean, you don't get much more bad boy than these two right here. But deep down, both of them having a good heart and being protective of their partners. Now, I will say Wei Wuxian gets a little bit ahead of Moriarty in the last department with being protective because it is canon that he is with his partner and they are romantically involved. Whereas William, there's a lot of subtext. We pretty much know it's canon, but he kind of, isn't as vocal about it as Wei Wuxian. So as much as I love William Moriarty, Wei Wuxian not only had the votes, but he definitely has the protection over his partner while also being a bad boy. That's a pretty good definitive husbando right there. So Wei Wuxian from Mode Azushi is going to go on and advance into the top 32. The next round, I'm really excited. We have Kazuma Soma getting some old man love up in here versus Ghetto from Jujutsu Kaisen. Some of these husbando nominations, I was like, you're just pulling my leg, right? And Ghetto managed to get in, which aesthetically pleasing Ghetto is. Not going to dispute anybody on that one. But Kazuma Soma, also aesthetically pleasing. Now, here's the thing. Kazuma Soma is not a bad boy. Not at all. No, he is very much a mentor. Ghetto is the epitome of a bad boy. However, based on what I've seen from Jujutsu Kaisen, can I say Ghetto has a good heart? Can I say he's protective of his partner? I don't know, y'all. I don't get those vibes. Whereas Kazuma Soma, he has a good heart and he is been known to be protective. You know he'd be protective of his partner, right? Because he's protective of others around him in a similar vein. So as hot as Ghetto is, I got to give it to Kazuma Soma. He has more of the category boxes checked off in this round, even if he's not a bad boy. So Kazuma Soma is advancing on to our top 32. Now, there's going to be some rounds coming up that, because of the criteria set forth, are going to lead to some upsets. And to that, I'm going to go ahead and apologize ahead of time. I'm sorry. It's going to be bad. And I when I got to these parts of the bracket, I was like, ooh, uh-oh. So I even went to the Discord on Patreon with some questions in some of these categories being like, okay, without telling you all anything and who's up against who, I just need you to answer this question. Is this character this? And the first round that gave me that inclination to go to Patreon was Gojo versus Jae-ha. Because both of them are hot, right? Both of them are hot, and they both have bad boy appeal. They both come across as like, they're good guys, right? But they got that bad boy charm, right? And they both have a good heart deep down, right? We both established that in both series. But the question was, between the two of them, would they be protective of their partner? That was the big question. And with Jae-ha, the answer is yes. Yes, he has proven time and time again that the people he cares about, his partners, people who could possibly be in romantic situations with him, he is extremely protective of. So with Jae-ha, there was no question. With Gojo, would he be protective of his partner? I wasn't sure based on what I know from the anime, because I'm still anime only until this summer. Now, Gojo's back on the bracket again next year. Could be a totally different thing. But for right now, I was like, I don't know if Gojo would be protective of his partner. So I went to Patreon and I asked in the Jujutsu Kaisen Discord channel, I said, just quick question, guys. Do you think, no spoilers, do you think that Gojo is a protective partner? And the very first couple of answers were, eh? They were like, maybe? We don't, well, that was the answers. And so here's what I'm going to say, y'all. I love Gojo to pieces. He's a fan favorite. He was number 3 on the bracket this year, but he broke up with a guy in front of a KFC. Can we really consider someone husbando material when they break up with someone in front of a place serving chicken and gravy? I don't know. So Jae-ha, I'm glad he gets to move forward this year. He didn't last year. Jae-ha is moving forward in the husbando bracket to the top 32. I'm sorry, Gojo. You just lucked out on a bad set of criteria. Don't worry, you won't be the only one. So next round is my man, Otasaku from Bungo Stray Dogs versus my man from Haikyuu, Akashi. I really like both of these characters. Unfortunately, the bad boy criteria really hurt Akashi in this round because Otasaku, hot. He's a damn mercenary. Of course, he's got a bad boy side, but he's got a heart of gold, and he'll do anything to protect the people he cares about. Akashi, hot, heart of gold, would do anything to protect the people he cares about. The only problem is he's not a bad boy. So by that criteria alone, unfortunately, he doesn't make it past to the next round, and Otasaku from Bungo Stray Dogs makes it through. Next round, our boy Haiji Kiyose is back, and the second individual to make it on both of the husbando and waifu brackets is Bond Moriarty from Moriarty the Patriot. Reagan was the first. Reagan's on both because you crazy people on Patreon. Bond's the second, which is fitting. But Bond versus Haiji is pretty interesting because honestly, both aesthetically pleasing, both kind of have that bad boy persona. They're not really bad boys, but Bond is working for the Moriarty crew, and Haiji's known as a demon through the first half of the season. So you have that, but both have a good heart, and both have been shown to be very protective of the people they care about. So what do we do from there? Then it comes up to Patreon to choose who advances, and Haiji was second seed, y'all, and I'm happy to say that he's going to advance on to the top 32. So we get into the next bracket. So that was our first 16 group couples. The second bracket, our first seed Hua Chong from Heaven Official's Blessing versus Crollo from Hunter x Hunter. I feel like there's some that just made this bracket that I'm like, okay, they're just hot. Because Hua Chong, Crollo, attractive characters, very much fitting the bad boy persona. I think Hua Chong fits this one expertly, as does Crollo. But then it comes down to Hua Chong does have a good heart, and we've seen so far in the series, if you're watching my novel reactions, he's willing to go to some great lengths to protect the person he cares about. Crollo, it's questionable how good of a heart he has deep down, and would he really protect people that he cared about, or is he only out for himself? From what I remember of Hunter x Hunter, and I've not finished the series, but from what I remember, I don't think he cuts the last two, right? At least he doesn't have a romantic interest like Hua Chong does that we can see it in action. So Hua Chong, very easily for me, advances to the top 32. Now, this next one was tough. This next one was really tough. Viktor Nikiforov versus Chuya from Bungo Stray Dogs. Viktor Nikiforov from Yuri on Ice. Both him and Chuya, hot, both having a good heart, both protective of the people they care about. Here's the thing, though. Chuya is a bad boy. He really is, right? Viktor is not a bad boy. Victor's like a soccer dad that thinks he's a bad boy, right? He wants you to think he's a big and bad, but no, he's a big cinnamon bun. And it was a little harder in some other rounds because you'd have characters that kind of like Reagan and Sosuke in the first round. They're not bad boys, but they kind of have that persona. Victor kind of has that persona, but Chuya is a bad boy. He really is. So Chuya really embodies all 4 categories, where Victor barely makes the mark into them. So it was really hard, and they were very close in ranking. Victor was 8 seed and Chuya was 9 seed, but the bad boy was our tiebreaker in this one, and I had to give it to Chuya. So Chuya from Bungo Stray Dogs, he's going to advance on to the top 32. And then we have Kaoru from Neon Genesis Evangelion versus Yuji Itadori from Jujutsu Kaisen. And again, I think what's interesting in this one is that both Kaoru and Yuji, both very attractive characters. Kaoru is a bad boy. He's a bad boy for reasons. I'm not going to spoil anybody. Yuji's not really a bad boy. He's got a heart of gold, right? I want to argue that in the end, Kaoru does have a good heart, and Yuji does as well. And I would say Yuji has the advantage over Kaoru in that Yuji would do anything to protect his friends and potential partner. Whereas Kaoru, would they do anything to protect their partner? That might be questionable, right? So you had Kaoru on the one hand that had 3 categories. You had Yuji who had 3 categories. They're both very, very different characters. So for me, it had to come down to Patreon. Okay, who's going to advance? And Kaoru was our 5 seed. Yuji was our 10 seed. So by votes on Patreon, Kaoru ends up winning this round and advances on to the top 32. Oh, these next rounds are going to be really bad. This one's going to upset probably a lot of people, but I have to be honest. It's Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan versus Akihiko from Given. I'm glad Akihiko made it back. I'm glad Eren made it back. Honestly, the first 2 categories, both hot characters, and they are both bad boys. Eren is for sure a bad boy, and so is Akihiko. Both bad boys that fitted so well. I was like, okay, awesome. So then it comes down to their hearts and caring for others. Do I think Eren Yeager has a good heart deep down? Yes, I do. Do I think Akihiko does? Yes, I do. So then it comes down to what we do to protect our partners. And this is where it gets a little bit challenging because you could argue that Eren would do many things to protect his partner, such as destroying the rest of the world. You could argue that Akihiko would do a lot to protect his partner too. But here's the thing, and I have not read the manga for Attack on Titan. I don't want spoilers, don't tell me. But in this round, if Eren's back on the chart next year, I may have a whole new spin on his character for this bracket. But for this bracket this year, Eren Yeager would go to many extremes, even destroying the world to protect you. But Akihiko is willing to change himself to make himself better to protect you. He's willing to make himself better in addition to that. And I kind of admire that in a husbando, that they would be willing to protect you and also by doing so make themselves better. So this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, but I also don't want the person that's my husbando protecting me by slaughtering an entire world. So I'm going to give it to Akihiko, damn it. Akihiko's going to advance to the top 32. Sorry, Eren. Sorry. A whole bunch of flocks in the audience are throwing their full glasses of wine at me, and I will catch them and drink them gloriously. Next round is Masaki from Sarune versus Sherlock Holmes from Moriarty the Patriot. This one was very difficult because you have 2 tall, dark, and handsome men. You have Masaki and Sherlock, who both kind of have, they're not bad boys, but they kind of have, again, that persona, that kind of vibe surrounding them. Both have a good heart, and they both are willing to do things to protect the people they care about, right? So again, it comes down to Patreon, which one would be the most apt, since they're such similar characters in terms of that kind of personality. And Masaki was our 6th seed from Sarune. So Masaki, Kiwani, it's that damn animation, getting Masaki to go into our top 32. Then we have Ash Lynx from Banana Fish versus Lelouch from Code Geass. I'm amazed. There's going to be a lot of Code Geass characters on this Husbando and Waifu bracket, which I'm kind of amazed by. The Code Geass fans came out in droves, which I haven't watched Code Geass in like 10 years. So I even had to get on Wikipedia and look some stuff up and be like, what was this character like again? But, I mean, Lelouch is pretty unforgettable. They're pretty iconic and maybe unforgivable. But both Ash Lynx and Lelouch fit the bad boy persona. Both of them do have a good heart deep down and would go to extreme lengths to care about their partners. Now again, Lelouch kind of fits a little bit onto the Eren side in terms of that protection bit. I don't know if I really want him controlling others in order to protect me. But I would say, without spoiling anything, that Ash Lynx would literally lay himself down to protect the person he cares about. So, and plus he had more votes. So I would say that because of that, Ash Lynx is going to advance onto the top 32. I'm just avoiding the Eren fans right now. But don't worry. One of my top picks is going to go down in this round, and I'm heartbroken. So I will suffer, y'all. Don't worry. I will have my atonement here shortly. Next round is Chang Xiaoxi from Link Click versus Yuta from Jujutsu Kaisen. This round was really interesting because I love both of these characters. Neither of them are like the main, well, I guess Chang is a main character in Link Click, him and Lu. But I feel like they're not like larger than life characters, either of them are, so it's rather interesting they both made the Husbando bracket and are against each other. Chang, I wouldn't describe Chang as a bad boy, honestly. No, he's not a bad boy. Maybe you could say he has that kind of persona, but he's too good. He's like a golden tree. He's too much of a golden retriever for it, right? Whereas Yuta is framed throughout season 1 until you get to the movie as kind of being a bad boy. He kind of has that persona. He has that mysterious air that he's somebody you don't want to mess with. And then in the movie, he kind of gets a little bit of that persona. Both him and Chang have a good heart underneath it all, and they would do anything to protect their partner. But I would argue that Yuta has shown through the movie itself that he would go to a lot of lengths to protect his partner that he cares about, even cursing them. So this was really hard, but I think because of the bad boy persona that Yuta has a slight edge over Chang, I'm going to give it to Yuta from Jujutsu Kaisen. He's going to advance on into the top 32. When I got to this, when I did Gojo originally, I was starting to regret the bad boy criteria being in this category because I was like, oh, this is going to knock some people out right off the bat. And then we got to this round. This is spiked, by the way, because I knew I'd need it at this point. Nanami Kinto versus Sebastian Moran. I've got to be objective, y'all. I've got to be objective. Because both of them are hot. They both have good hearts. They'd both do anything to protect their partners. But is Nanami Kinto a bad boy? When it comes down to the tiebreaker, is Nanami Kinto a bad boy? Sebastian Moran is, absolutely. Ladies man, womanizer, definitely as the bad boy persona. But Nanami Kinto? I went to Discord and all I asked was, is Nanami Kinto what you would consider a bad boy? And literally the first 5 responses were, no. Like, didn't even know the context. They were just like, no, why would you say that? So, because of the criteria that I have set forward from Patreon, this is my repentance for getting Eren off of the Husbando bracket. This is my payment. This is the price I had to pay for Eren not to advance. And that is I have to sacrifice Nanami Kinto for Sebastian Moran to advance. That's where we're at, y'all. So no, Nanami Kinto's not advancing. He's in my heart. He's Husbando number 1 in my heart. Him and Suda. But no, Sebastian Moran's going to advance, and the only positive thing is that he won't win this year, so he can be on the bracket next year. Okay, but we have still yet one final round to go, and that is Every year so far, I know this is only the second year, but last year we had to do a series of super advanced polls to see who would be our final bracket member. This year we had to do the exact same. We were down to the final bracket spot, and there was 5 that were tied for that number 64 spot. And so we did a poll, and Kenzo Tenma won it. The only problem is he's up against Lan Wangji every year. I'm just going to assume at this point that whoever is the last on the poll is going to go up against Lan Wangji and is probably going to lose. But I would say Kenzo gives Lan Wangji a very big run for his money because both hot, both have a good heart, both would do literally anything to protect the people they care about. Both are bad boys. Lan Wangji, he's willing to get whiplashes for his dude and go against his entire family to protect the man he loves. That's bad boy enough for me. Kenzo Tenma, he's a doctor gone rogue. That's enough for me. So they really were neck and neck, and it literally had to come down to the Patreon votes. And Lan Wangji was a number 1 seed, so it was just like set in stone. But man, I feel for whatever character has to go up against Lan Wangji in the Husbando poll because he's gonna be a hard contender, y'all. And I love Kenzo, so it was just difficult. But yeah, Lan Wangji goes on to the top 32. Next up, we have a ridiculous round where we have Aizawa from My Hero Academia versus Dazai from Bungo Stray Dogs. You all are either going to hate me or love me on this one because you have Aizawa and Dazai, 2 characters. Depending on if you read Vigilantes or not, you may question whether Aizawa is a bad boy or not. He is. I'd say he is because I've read Vigilantes and I would count that as part of the canon. So I'd count Aizawa as a bad boy. Dazai is for sure. Both of them have a heart of gold and both of them would do literally anything to protect the people that they care about. So that makes it really hard because they're both pretty evenly matched in my terms of who I think would come out on top. I'm going to be honest. I could have probably made a stronger argument saying that Dazai maybe is a little bit more of a bad boy, but I decided to go with Patreon because Dazai made it pretty far last year, and Aizawa got the shaft right off the bat. I feel kind of bad for him for that, so I was like, nah, I'm going to go with Patreon votes and let their nominations determine, and the number 8 seed was Aizawa, the number 9 seed was Dazai, so Chuya advances, but Dazai does not. We're going to have Aizawa go ahead and move forward to our top 32 on our Husbandos. Just some bad draws this round. This year I was like, man, we're just cutting out some of the high hitters right off the bat. It's going to make things interesting when we get down to the nitty gritty. It's going to make things a little unpredictable. So I'm kind of excited about that, right? Our next round is Young Chang. He moved up quite a bit in the ranks this year. Young Chang from Modazushi and Hattori Soma from Fruits Basket. Hattori is one of my favorites. I love him. But he is not a bad boy. I wouldn't describe him really as a bad boy. He's too much of a good guy. He's a dang doctor. He's not a bad boy. So I wouldn't describe him as such. He's a little too straight-laced for that. But Zhang Chang, yeah, he's a bad boy. Straight-laced as well, but he has that kind of tsundere edge to him, right? Both of them have a good heart deep down. Both of them are willing to do many things to protect the people that they care about. So because Chang is a little bit more of a bad boy, he edges out to take into the top 32 over Hattori Soma. Then we have Levi Ackerman from Attack on Titan versus Shoto Todoroki from My Hero Academia, which is hilarious because Shoto is voiced by the same VA as Eren Yeager. But Levi versus Shoto, this one was tough because both of them have a good heart and would do literally anything to protect the people they care about. And they're both kind of pseudo bad boys. I mean, Shoto has that kind of bad boy reputation in season 2. And Levi, he's from the underground, so yeah. So they're kind of more on even footing objectively in this round than you would think. So again, going through Patreon, Levi was our number 4 seed. Shoto was our number 13 seed. So Levi advances to the top 32. That one was an easier decision because once you got down to the votes, it was pretty clear. This one, 2 characters that couldn't be more different. Salmura Ajun from Ace of the Diamond versus Albert Moriarty from Moriarty the Patriot. I love both of these characters so much, and they're both so attractive. I would say this. Both attractive, Both have good hearts deep down. Both will do a lot to protect their partners. And you may ask, well, how is Aejun a bad boy? Albert's obviously a bad boy because he's with the Moriarty crew. How is Sawamura a bad boy? I'm like, he decked an entire middle school baseball team in chapter 1. Like, that's pretty bad boy if you think about it, right? So I will qualify that. If in the first chapter he's decking middle school kids because he didn't like the way a game went, that delinquent behavior earns him the bad boy reputation, at least for the beginning of the anime. Plus, he called out the team, said he was going to be ace in the first chapter, and basically just called the coach's bluff in one fell swoop. I mean, that pretty much fits the bill, right? So, because these two characters were so different, for that reason, I had to go to Patreon, because I was like, these characters are too different. I cannot, it's like apples and oranges. What did Patreon think? And y'all picked Sawamura as the number 6 seed. Moving on up this year. So I love you, Albert. You are green-eyed and beautiful, and I will love your roses and your relationship with Mycroft. But Sawamura, he's making it on to the top 32. Speaking of handsome men, this round hurt my heart. Hurt it so much. Not as much as Nanami's round, but this one hurt. Kaji Ryoji from Neon Genesis versus Jean Kirstein from Attack on Titan. My king, Jean, versus the hottest guy from the 90s, Ryoji. This one's hard. But both Kaji and Jean, aesthetically pleasing. I would say Kaji pulls off the bad boy persona way more than Jean. Jean's not really a bad boy. He doesn't have that going for him. Kaji does. Both have good hearts, and both would do anything to protect their partners. I'm thoroughly convinced. But Kaji just has a bit more bad boy swagger than Jean. Jean's a mama's boy. And as much as he's my king, this criteria, he just couldn't cut it. So Kaji is going to make it to the top 32. Hashtag sad days for our king. I will mourn him in spirit, him and Aaron. But Levi made it through, so there we go, right? We at least have that, right? So this was not a good bracket for the Haikyuu folks. I'll go ahead and tell you all this. Haikyuu was not doing too good this year in the Husbando brackets because they were up against some stiff competition. And this next round is Miyuki Kazuya versus Kuro Tetsuya from Haikyuu. Both guys that have good hearts, that are willing to protect their friends, both hot. And then you have Miyuki. Miyuki, I would say, you may argue that Miyuki doesn't have a bad boy persona, but then you could argue that neither does Kuro. It depends on how you view their characters, because Kuro's kind of a nerd, and Miyuki's a prodigy. But Miyuki's like a troll bad boy, and Kuro is kind of like a sexy bad boy. So they both have a bad boy vibe in their own ways. So again, went through Patreon. Popularity vote put Miyuki to win and advance in the top 32. So our Ace of the Diamond boys doing good so far, right? This next round is by far the weirdest round in the bracket. And this is one I had to ask about as well. It's L from Death Note and Joe from Skate the Infinity. And Joe. So, I'm very curious, right? I'm very curious in this round because here's the thing. Elle and Joe, you can't argue Elle's not attractive because there's too much fan art. There's too many people fangirling over him for him not to be. But neither Elle nor Joe are really bad boys. Not really. Joe may look it, but he's not. And Elle may seem it, but he's not. So neither of them really fit the bad boy category at all. So it's like, well, what do we do then? They both have good hearts deep down, right? I guess maybe you could argue that Elle's a monster, so maybe he fits the bad boy persona in that realm. You could argue that, but Joe definitely is not a bad boy. They both have a good heart deep down. They have good intentions. Then the question comes, would they do anything to protect their partner? I feel like Joe would, and Joe has stood up and protected people he cares about. Elle is an interesting question. I had to go to Discord to ask this and be like, would Elle protect someone that they care about? And I think we do have proof of that in that he tried to protect Aizawa from going and getting killed after one of the partners on the task force dies. So it's like, would Elle protect the partner? Yes. Is Kojiro a bad boy? Maybe. So it was really apples and oranges between them, and I did not feel confident choosing because both of them fit the categories in different ways. So I said, I'm just gonna let Patreon pick and go for this round. So Elle was one of our number 2 seeds, and Joe sadly was a 15 seed. So I feel bad, but Elle's gonna advance by the skin of his frog-like teeth to the next round. Barely. Now, will Elle make it any further? We shall see, but he's gonna advance on for this round here. Our final bracket of our husbandos is Lloyd Forger, aka Twilight, from Spy Family, versus Tatsu from Way of the House Husband. This one's hard. This one was hard too. Because both Lloyd and Tatsu, Lloyd, being a spy, has kind of a bad boy persona through that way. Tatsu's a freaking Yakuza, so of course he meets the bad boy persona. Both have a good heart. Both are willing to go to extreme lengths to protect the people they care about. So they're both very, very similar in terms of being characters. And so again, I had to go to Patreon to see how do we break this tie. And Lloyd was one of our number 1 seeds. As much as I love Tatsu, and I think Tatsu is a min among men, I love him to pieces, but I had to go with the popular vote for this one, and so Lloyd advances on to the top 32. Then we have Roy Mustang from Full Metal Alchemist versus Megumi Fushiguro from Jujutsu Kaisen. This one was hard as well. Very hard. Because both aesthetically pleasing. Megumi has had bad boy moments, like he was on a tower of bodies in the middle school. And then you have Roy Mustang burning a woman homunculus alive, snapping his fingers to do so, making his own transmutation circle on his hand. Badass bad boy. I'm all for it. And some of the decisions he makes throughout the series, you're like, that was kind of a bad boy move. But then both of them have a good heart deep down, and both of them are willing to go to great lengths to protect the people they care about. So it's really close between the two of them. My gut instinct would be to choose Roy Mustang, because I think he brings a little bit more solid details from what I've seen so far in the anime and in the manga from him. I'm anime only with Megumi, so I know a little bit about his character, but I feel like there's more examples with Roy to justify him fitting all 4 categories. So I had to go with Roy Mustang. Sorry, Megumi, but I had to go with our tried and true classic boy to advance to the top 32. Again, Haikyuu. I wish that there had, 1, been more nominations that made it, but 2, I have, y'all, sitting in front of me on my computer, 3 Oikawas. I have 3 Oikawas sitting in front of me. This hurt. because as my dog's trying to get them, you have Oikawa from Haikyuu, and you have Nezumi from number 6. Nezumi from number 6. I was so amazed that this character not only got nominated for the Husbando bracket, because I didn't think anybody would remember those reactions I did, but also that he made it to the 12th seed. I was like, wow, he actually made it pretty high up there. All right. So here's the thing. Both Oikawa and Nezumi are beautiful characters. They both have good hearts. But when it comes down to it, I was really thinking about it. And Oikawa and Nezumi definitely fits the bad boy category very well. Oikawa's not really a bad boy. He's a pretty boy. He's a preppy boy. He's a jock. But is he a bad boy? Not really in my book. He wears his glasses and pea coat to come watch, this Shiratorizawa game. He's not really a bad boy. If he had a leather jacket like Waizumi, bad boy. But pea coat and glasses, no. So he doesn't really fit that category. And then I'm sure he would protect his partner and friends, but do we see any examples of Oikawa actually doing that in the manga and anime? We definitely see it with Nezumi. We definitely see through the manga and the anime him literally putting his life on the line for the people that he cares about. Oikawa, there's not really as many examples. So as much as I love Oikawa, he's my favorite character in Haikyuu, I was really heartbroken, but I was like, man, no, Nezumi checks off all 4 boxes in this category. He's going to advance to the top 32. Poor Oikawa. Tears, y'all. Man, while it was not a good day for Haikyuu in the Husbando bracket, it was a good day for Ace of the Diamond, for the most part. Because we have Kuromochi from Ace of the Diamond versus Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, I know what you're thinking. If we were just basing it on aesthetics alone, Sukuna is the heartthrob of this couple. I won't debate you there. And Sukuna is the bad boy of this couple for sure. But Kuromochi's also a bad boy. He's a delinquent. So he fits that category as well. It's the rest of the criteria that Sukuna doesn't fit. Because does Sukuna have a good heart? Does the King of Demons? Is he willing to protect the person he really truly cares about? He was ready for Yuji to die. He was totally fine with that. Nope. So, for those reasons alone, sadly, as much of a bad boy as Sukuna is, Kuromochi would definitely protect his partner and definitely has a heart of gold. So Kuromochi advances on to the top 32. Now, the luck for Ace of the Diamond, sadly, does have to come to an end. And it could not end at a more sad and somber note because I just got done saying Oikawa wasn't making it. And then we cut to another character that Oikawa voices, which is Chris from Ace of the Diamond versus Kiyosoma from Fruits Basket. And this round, y'all, why? Chris is like one of my favorite characters of Ace of the Diamond. He's a big old teddy bear. He has such a good heart. He'd be so protective of others, but he is not a bad boy. He is definitely not a bad boy. And Kiyosoma is the bad boy of Fruits Basket. So he is the bad boy of Fruits Basket. So, and he also has a great heart and would do anything to protect the people he cares about. So I had to give it to the one that gets 4 out of 4. Chris, you and Nanami have my heart, but I had to give it to Kiyosoma to advance on to the top 32. This bracket's been rough, y'all. We got 3 more pairs to talk about. So then we have Shi Lien from Heaven Official's Blessing versus Cherry from Skate the Infinity. Ooh, Skate the Infinity, I feel bad for you too. You and IQ, I feel the most bad for. Because Shi Lien, not only Heart of Gold, would do literally anything to protect the people he cares about, but he does get a bad boy in it. I'm not going to spoil anybody, but there's a couple arcs I've read so far in the series. He fits the bad boy persona for those. So I'm like, okay. And Cherry, while he does have the bad boy appearance, it's kind of like a snarky bad boy and does have a heart of gold. I feel that he would do anything to protect his partner, but kind of like Oikawa, I want to see that more in action. Like with Joe, we've seen him defend Cherry in the series, but I've not seen Cherry do as much on that reciprocating end to match up with Shi Lien. So just a rough matchup for Skate the Infinity. And we didn't have enough votes with Longa or Reki or Adam or Tadashi to get into the top, 64. So just a stacked bracket, y'all. Just a stacked bracket. Probably one of the weirder rounds in this Husbando bracket, and we're nearing the end, but one of the weirder rounds was Arthur Browse from Attack on Titan. I'm glad Arthur Browse made it in the top 64. Y'all, Papa Browse making it. Versus Hal Pendragon from Howl's Moving Castle. The only movie entry to make it into this bracket, oddly enough. But Arthur Browse, again, kind heart, protective of others. Hal Pendragon, kind heart, protective of others. I definitely view Hal as a bad boy. I don't view Arthur as a bad boy. He's too wholesome. He's our wholesome dad that gives us our Children in the Forest speech. Best dad award goes to Arthur Browse, hands down. But as far as being a bad boy, sadly, no. So in terms of our husbandos, Hal Pendragon, he checks off all the boxes for Howl's Moving Castle. Arthur, I love you. I wish you were my dad, but you can't be my husbando. So Hal's moving on to the top 32. And then our final round, probably going to cause some debate, but Aki from Chainsaw Man versus Aomine from Kuroko's Basketball. Our only competitors from each to make it onto the bracket, oddly enough. Both aesthetically pleasing. Both, I would say Aomine fits the bad boy persona a little bit more than Aki, maybe, but Aki can fit the bad boy persona too, especially at the end. Kicking someone's nuts would make you a bad boy in my view. They both have a good heart underneath it all. This is where I also had to get on Discord and ask about Aki, being like, okay, would you think Aki would be protective of others? And they were like, yes. There was like a unanimous yes, absolutely. And I do agree with that. the difference is that Aki is much quieter than Aomine, and Aomine is more of like a gruff in your face. Like Aomine does defend Kuroko when he's not there from that one guy in the locker room, but he gets kind of flaky sometimes, right? And Aomine, if you're looking at him as a character, he kind of, thinks about things sort of, a minute too late, right? He says something and then realizes too late it was the wrong thing to say. Aki is very focused and very meticulous about doing and saying the right thing. So he would be on the ball with protecting you as a partner. Whereas Aomine, as long as he wasn't napping somewhere, I guess you'd be okay. But for that reason, Aki, I had assured reviews from the Discord that yes, he would definitely protect a partner. Aomine gets a little questionable, depends on who you are. So Aki's going to advance on to the top 32, but that one was honestly really, really hard. So that's our husbandos. Now the waifus were treated the exact same way. The same criteria: bad girl, good heart, protective of others, has to be aesthetically pleasing. And again, all of our female candidates met this criteria wonderfully. So I'm not exactly sure if it was as difficult picking as the husbandos were for this round, but there were definitely some female characters on this roster that I was less than familiar with, that I had to do actual research on, mainly because they were from Code Geass. But our first round was not the case there. Our number one seed for the second year running, Zen Maki from Jujutsu Kaisen versus Ochako from My Hero Academia. What a bad round for Ochako. Because, yeah, Maki has a bad girl kind of persona with her, right? She cares for others. She'll defend the heck out of anybody she considers to be a partner. And Ochako has a good heart and would defend others, but she does not have a bone in her body that's a bad girl. The closest she ever gets to it is challenging Bakugo, and even then, she was like pure and innocent. So, Ochako, I love her in My Hero Academia. She's one of my favorites. But Zen Maki, y'all, she blows past this round. Very easy for her. What wasn't easy was, in fact, this next round, because these two were very, very close. They were the 8 and 9 seeds. And it doesn't help that they're from the same show. The 8 and 9 seed for this first bracket was Hanji Zoe and Annie Leonhardt from Attack on Titan. Ooh. Hanji got pretty far in the bracket last year. Good heart, definitely will do anything to protect people that they care about. Annie Leonhardt sadly lost to Sailor Pluto in an upset last year. But this year, I think the bad girl persona allows her to edge out just a wee bit. Because, yeah, she does have a good heart underneath it all. And I think she would protect the people she cares about in her own way. So when it comes down to it, it was very, very close. But Hanji has just enough. Hanji's good, but Annie has just enough bad girl in her to kind of narrow through to make it to the next round. So I'm happy for Annie. She gets to make it through this bracket for the top 32. Hanji, I love you. You'll at least have next year, right? Because I'm sure she'll, as being the number 8 seed, I'm sure she'll make it back next year. This next one has 2 newbies to the bracket for our waifus, but what waifus they are. The Windmaster for Heaven Official's Blessing and Biscuit Kruger from Hunter x Hunter. I forgot who Biscuit Kruger even was. I had to go look her up and was like, oh, Biscuit. It's about as far as I made on the series before I put it on hiatus and was like, oh yeah, her. So both Biscuit and Windmaster, here's the thing. I'd categorize neither of them as bad girls. They really aren't. So they don't fit that category at all. They both have good hearts, both willing to protect the people they care about, but neither of them are bad girls. So it kind of put them on equal footing, oddly enough. So I decided to let Patreon pick the winner for this. And Biscuit, while I'm glad I was reminded of who she was, the Windmaster is iconic and very much squeaks forward into the top 32. Now, someone asked on Patreon when we started these nominations, they said, could I nominate this character as a waifu? And I said, honestly, you can nominate any character for waifu or husbando. It is, even though we typically think of husbandos as male and waifus as female, I am not restrictive over what we apply as Husbando waifu. I'm honestly ashamed and sad that Thorkel from Vinland Saga did not make the waifu bracket. I'm really sad because I was waiting for it, right? One day, Thorkel will make the waifu bracket and I'll have a lot of fun with his character. But it is not this year. However, this one was rather surprising. Yosana from Bungo Stray Dogs versus Feminine Mojito from Jujutsu Kaisen. A very specific mojito, specifically the one from Juju Stroll, was the one that was used for this. Now, I would say even if it was mojito without being the feminine version, Yosano kind of wins this category. I mean, Yosano has kind of, with the fact of her ability, a bad girl-esque persona. She cares about others. She's willing to protect them. Feminine mojito, aesthetically pleasing. Bad girl, absolutely. But good heart and cares about others and protects them? Nope. So I can't say that Feminine Mojito can beat out Yasano, but it was a good run, right? Now, this next one was an old school, an oldie. Callan from Code Geass versus Sailor Neptune from Sailor Moon. Two old school girl characters that honestly, Callan and Sailor Neptune, it's hard because on the outskirts, you're like, neither of them are bad girls. I mean, I guess you could say Callan kind of has like a tough personality, and I guess you could say that Sailor Neptune's part of the outer Sailor Scouts that have like a bad girl reputation when the series starts with them, but neither are really bad girls, not really. And they both have a good heart. They both are willing to protect others and do whatever it takes to do so. So it makes them kind of on even keel. So I had to go to Patreon to see who would vote for which one would be the one to advance. And Callan from Code Geass was our 6th seed. So I'm glad Callan makes it further. I don't think she did last year, so I'm glad she makes it further. But I'll go ahead and say, if you're a Sailor Moon fan like I am, this bracket's going to be a little rough. But next round is our 3rd seed, Nobara, versus Rin Soma from Fruits Basket. Oh, these two girls. Again, two female characters that are very, very similar in ways. Both have kind of a bad girl persona and vibe to them. Both have a good heart. Both are willing to protect others that they care about. Obviously, the higher seed is Nobara. And with these two characters being so evenly matched, I felt it was only reasonable to go with Patreon and what they chose as their upper pick, which is Nobara. She advances on to the top 32. Next is a rather interesting matchup. It's Peak Finger from Attack on Titan versus Haruhi from Ouran High School Host Club. It's a hard one, right? But here's the thing. Haruhi and Peak, beautiful characters, have a good heart, willing to protect others that they care about. Haruhi is not a bad girl. She's just not. She's a goody. She's a good girl. Goody two shoes. Maybe not a goody two shoes, but she's a good girl. Doesn't quite fit the bad girl persona that Peak does. Because of that criteria, Peak edges forward to make it to our top 32. Then we have Mikasa from Attack on Titan and Isuzu from Free. Man, Free just got the shaft in this year's bracket. I feel bad because Free's one of my favorite anime, and they just could not catch a break in terms of the rankings because, I mean, neither Mikasa nor Isuzu are bad girls. Neither of them are. They both have a good heart. They both want to protect others. But I'd say Mikasa takes the cake in terms of protecting others. Isuzu, sure, she'd probably protect her friends, but Mikasa's like ride or die. She will go yandere on you to protect you. Mikasa will do whatever she can to protect you no matter what. So because she's so balls to the walls about it, Mikasa has to advance on to the top 32. That was sadly a pretty easy choice for me, but I feel bad that Isuzu doesn't advance. So then we go to our next bracket, our next top 16, and our number 1 seed for this section is Riza Hawkeye from Full Metal Alchemist versus Haruka Hatsuhara from Fooly Cooly. Man, I feel like Haruka just needs to find a good matchup. She needs to get higher up in the seeds so she can make a good matchup, because having to face off against Riza Hawkeye is just unfair. Because yeah, you could argue that Riza may not be a bad girl like Haruka is, But Haruka, would she really do anything to protect someone, or is she kind of more chaotic, right? Both of them have good hearts, both Riza and Haruka. But Riza would go above and beyond to protect someone, whereas I don't know if Haruka would. And so, because they kind of balance out in terms of the categories, Riza not being the bad girl and Haruka not really being the protective one, we kind of had to go with which one had the more popular vote on Patreon, which was obviously Riza. So Riza had to win this one, but Haruka, I'm rooting for you to get further in this bracket at some point, girl. And it just makes me want to watch Fooly Cooly over again all the more. So next up, newbie Kobeni from Chainsaw Man versus Nanako Hasegawa. Longa's mom! I just love that Longa's mom was not only on this bracket, but she was a 9th seed. She rose up from like 15 seed to 9th seed. That's how good she is. And it just sucks that she's up against Kobeni. I wanted Longa's mom to make it further, but while both Longa's mom and Kobeni have a good heart, Kobeni is willing to go all the way to protect somebody, you know, to the point of holding someone at knife point. And Kobeni, oddly enough, kind of has a bad girl vibe. She doesn't seem like it, but then when you watch her in action, you're like, no, she's got a creepy factor. You can translate that to bad girl. Nanako is not a bad woman at all. She is like the mom of moms. So I'm telling you, I told Discord, I was like, should I ban the bad boy, bad girl category? Because it is just causing a lot of major upsets. And everybody was like, no, it's part of the fun. I'm like, okay. The good thing is we're getting it out of the way now. It's not going to be when we get down to like the nitty gritty. It's already done after this round. But Kobeni was our 8th seed. Lucky number 8. She's going to advance on to the top 22. Cece from Code Geass. We have Cece versus Mei Mei. How could you get it any more perfect, right? Mei Mei from Jujutsu Kaisen and Cece from Code Geass. I would say Cece has a bad girl kind of flair to her. Honestly, she has a good heart and is willing to go the distance to protect people she cares about, even sacrifice her own life, perhaps. Who knows? Versus Mei Mei, who, sadly, because I'm anime only with Jujutsu Kaisen, I just don't know enough about Mei Mei. Mei Mei is my Tengen of this year. Last year, I didn't know enough about Tengen from Demon Slayer to make an educated guess. Here, Mei Mei is the character I know not enough about to compete with Cece. So, because of that, Cece is going to advance into our top 32. But this next group, Misa Amane versus Maka from Soul Eater. 2 blonde girls that wear some like crazy fashion and going up against each other. The thing about it is, Misa is like a goth bad girl. She's not afraid to kill somebody and go yandere for the man that she loves. Maka's not a bad girl. She's a good girl. She really is. Both of them have good hearts. I think I would label Misa as having a good heart because she does care about Light and loves him. And that defines a good heart. And she's willing to go the distance to protect him. Now Maka, good heart, willing to go the distance to protect Soul. But Maka just doesn't have the bad girl category down. And Misa does. So because of the criterion in this year's bracket for this first round, Misa's going to advance to the top 32. Next! I'm honestly glad I watched a little bit ahead on Monster before I got to this point, because otherwise, when I originally did this bracket, I had not watched a few episodes of Monster that changed my mind. This is the only bracket pick I changed my mind on when I sat down to record and was going through everything, because we had Ling Wen versus Nina Fortner. Now, Ling Wen, I would not describe as a bad girl. Not really. You could say by association she might be. But then with Nina, you could say by association that she's a bad girl. She does some things that would make you think maybe she falls in that category. I feel like her and Ling Wen are both bad girls in the same way, right? Both of them have a good heart. But my thing is, I just now have gotten to the point where I've seen enough of Nina and I've not seen enough of Ling Wen. That's the problem. And I'm sure that once next year, when I come back and do the waifu bracket, and I know a bit more about Ling Wen, I don't want spoilers, obviously, then I'll be able to make a better educated decision. But from what I know now from both series, I feel like Nina is in a more solid place to protect her partner than Ling Wen is. And that's hard, right? But for this round, Nina Fortner, she's going to pull on through and be our waifu candidate to make it to the top 32. Now, these characters here are nothing alike. Himeno from Chainsaw Man and Young Hee from Yona of the Dawn. Now, Young Hee, obviously, beautiful character. I would say with Young Hee, though, if I'm being really honest, here's the thing. Young Hee is Suwon's mom in the series, and she's beautiful, but a bad girl? No, Himeno's definitely a bad girl, but Young Hee, I guess you could make the argument that her and Himeno are both bad, if you consider Himeno a bad girl, you consider Young Hee a bad girl, but I'm like, I definitely think Himeno fits it much better than Young Hee. Young Hee, not so much. Both of them having a good heart, and both of them willing to do anything to protect the person they care about. So I felt enough on the fence about it that I had to turn to Patreon just to make a final decision, because I was still kind of questioning in my mind the whole bad girl thing with both of them. But Himeno definitely had much more votes, many more votes than Young Hee, unfortunately. So Young Hee, I love her character in Yona of the Dawn. She's fantastic, but Himeno's going to advance to our top 32 in our waifus. So that leads Violet Evergarden from Violet Evergarden versus Shinobu from Demon Slayer. Yeah, this one's kind of weird because Violet Evergarden and Shinobu, neither of them are really bad girls. Not really. They do questionable things that could make you think that if they were a different character, they'd be a bad girl, like Violet being in the army, Shinobu being in the Demon Slayer Corps. But at the heart of it, they're not really bad girls. And they're both kind-hearted and would do anything to protect the people they care about. So again, it's kind of like they're both so similar as terms of characters that I had to go to Patreon, and Violet edged out being our number 7 seed over Shinobu being our number 10 seed. So Violet will advance onto the top 32. This one's gonna make me seem really bad, but Makima from Chainsaw Man versus Lily or Riri from Yona of the Dawn. Girl, I'm sorry. This was hard because they're two totally different characters, but come at the situation from different means. Both beautiful characters. Lily or Riri, depending on how you want to pronounce her name, heart of gold, good heart, would do anything to protect the people within her capacity, right? Makima, bad girl, through and through. But I asked Discord, I was like, I don't know enough about Makima yet. However, I feel like I don't know enough about Makima, but I want to ask you, without spoiling me, I asked them in the Discord, without spoiling me, do you think, because I don't know if Makima has a good heart or not, and I didn't want to ask that question because I feel it would lead to a spoiler. So instead I said, would Makima protect her partner? In your opinion, without spoiling me, based on what you've read and seen, would Makima protect their partner? And there were some really interesting answers. It was kind of long. At first, you would think that, Romania, this is going to be like Gojo, where the answer is like, I don't know. But it wasn't like that. Gojo was very much, all the answers about Gojo in the Husbando bracket was like, would he? I don't know. But he's kind of selfish. I don't know. But with Makima, the answers in the Discord were pretty nuanced. And they were like, well, if Makima determines that you are of value, yes, she would go to any length to protect you. So, objectively speaking, if you are her partner, she obviously considers you of value. So then the answer is, yes, she'll do her crazy things and protect you. So, in that regard, it made it to where there were 3 categories versus 3. Lily had aesthetically pleasing, kind-hearted, would do anything to protect you, and Makima would have aesthetically pleasing, a bad girl, and would do anything to protect you if you were her partner. So it kind of became apples and oranges at that point. And so I decided to let the Patreon votes speak for the winner. And as much as I love Lily and Yona of the Dawn, Makima is our 2nd seed. So by the skin of her teeth, she makes it into the top 32. Now again, where she goes to from here, that's a really good question. And I don't know the answer. So we'll see how that goes. But now we have Masato from Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Yelena from Attack on Titan. Two ladies that Yelena definitely fits the bad girl persona. But we know Yelena has a decent heart. She's kind of good underneath it all. Masato has a bad girl presence, but she really is a good girl. So she kind of evens out with Yelena there. Both has a good heart, and Masato would do anything to protect the people she cares about. And that kind of becomes the problem with Yelena, because we don't know enough about Yelena and Attack on Titan, or at least I don't at this point watching the series, to know if she really would do anything to protect the person she cares about. Now, you could argue that Zeke, maybe she would do anything to protect Zeke. All right, I'll buy that. So then it becomes, if both of them aren't equal footing, then who has the most votes? And Masato was our number 1 seed. So the round's going to go to Masato. She's going to advance on to the top 32. Speaking of Neon Genesis, I'm glad Masato won that round, because y'all know I love my best girl, Ramiel. But this round was not in her favor. We had Winry Rockbell from Full Metal Alchemist versus the best girl, Angel Ramiel from Neon Genesis. First and foremost, thank you, patrons, for voting for Ramiel to be our 9th seed in this competition. You beat out actual physical human women to get to this point. Ramiel, angels matter. Hashtag angels are beautiful. I love Ramiel. She's definitely a bad girl, obviously. Winry is not a bad girl at all, so you would think Ramiel would have the upper hand. But here's the thing. Ramiel's an angel, but we don't ever hear her talk, so we don't know if she has a good heart deep down. We don't know, because she doesn't interact with any other angels, if she would really lay down to protect them. So we kind of have a bunch of question marks around Ramiel, whereas with Winry, we know she has a good heart. We know she'd do anything to protect the people she cares about. So because of that, despite not being a bad girl, Winry checks off about 2 more boxes than Ramiel in terms of character. So she's going to advance on the top 32. But I'm just glad Ramiel made the top 64 and beat out some other contenders. I think that's pretty impressive. This round is like an old school throwback. It's Euphemia from Code Geass versus Machi from Hunter x Hunter. I had to look up Euphemia again, because honestly, with Yuffie, I forgot a lot about her. I was like, what's with her character? But I feel like with Machi, I feel like Euphemia is not only more popular in this poll, in this bracket, but also she does more in the series of Code Geass to protect the people she cares about than Machi does. Machi's a bit questionable with some of her loyalties in Hunter x Hunter, and that leads her to not quite, like, I feel like Machi has a decent heart underneath it all, but again, we don't get nearly as much with her as we do Euphemia and Code Geass. So because of that exposure, and because we see Euphemia in action more, I have to give the round to her over Machi. So I told you all that this was not a good round for Sailor Moon. It's not. We have Mirko from My Hero Academia versus Sailor Uranus from Sailor Moon. Honestly, Sailor Uranus and Mirko are pretty badass, like, competition to go against one another, because you have 2 strong, beautiful women that kind of have like a bad girl persona with them, and then they both have a good heart. They both protect others. They're like, probably of all of the pairs on the brackets that we've looked at, they are the ones that are the most alike, I feel. So it really came down to the polling and which one was more popular. And I feel like it's just because Sailor Moon is older as a series and My Hero Academia is more recent, and Mirko's been pretty badass in season 6. So Mirko wins and gets to advance to the top 32, but shedding a tear for you, Sailor Uranus. Shedding a tear. This one became really hard. Sylvia Sherwood from Spy Family versus the old school girl herself, Yaruichi from Bleach. The only Bleach girl to make it on the waifu bracket. I am astonished. I guess because I did this back in the fall, people hadn't watched the new 1,000 Year Blood War arc, but I'm like, really, Yaruichi's the only waifu nomination from Bleach? If any series should have waifus popping out of it, it should be Bleach. But interesting. I'm hoping with watching the 1,000 Year Blood War arc later this spring, or this summer rather, y'all will get some more waifu nominations, because there definitely deserves to be more ladies present on the bracket from Bleach. I'm just saying. But Sylvia and Yoruichi, both beautiful characters. They have a good heart. They're willing to go the distance to protect others that they care about. My thing is, I feel like Yoruichi, she has the bad girl persona. She leaves her clan behind. She goes and hang out with Urahara for decades. She's willing to do the moves that others won't. They kind of put her like as the bad guy, right? Whereas Sylvia is by the book, straightforward, thinks that she's part of the right side, the good side. She just doesn't have a bad girl bone in her like Yoruichi does. So I love Sylvia Sherwood. She's one of my favorite characters in Spy Family. But Yoruichi, she's going to make it on to our top 32. This round here is probably like our most understated round of the entire bracket. But it's Chao Ling from Link Click and Takako, who is one of the managers of Ace of the Diamond. This round was really interesting because neither of these are bad girls. They both have a good heart. But we've seen barely enough of either of them to know if they would really lay down the law for protecting the person they care about. We haven't seen enough, like we have theories we can say about their characters, but we haven't seen enough physical evidence with either to prove that that's true. So as much as I like Takako from Ace of the Diamond, Chao Ling, she had more votes through Patreon and ended up being the winner of this round to advance to the top 32. Then again, talking about Bond Moriarty, made it onto the Husbando bracket. Here they are again for the waifus. So it's Bond Moriarty versus Asuka Langley. I'm not going to make friends over this one, I'm sure. Because both Bond and Asuka, beautiful characters. They have the bad girl persona, but they have a good heart deep down. So it gets really difficult because Bond obviously has shown that they will do things in action to protect people that they care about. But so has Asuka. So I feel like both of these individuals, they both fit the categories and check off all the boxes. So what can I do? The only thing I can do is to go to Patreon. And as much as I wanted Asuka to win this round, she didn't get enough nominations. She was our 10 seed, and Bond ended up getting our 7 seed. So by sheer votes alone, Bond is going to advance to the top 32. I was really hoping Asuka would go further, but she can go hang out with Ida. It's fine. He didn't make the Husbando bracket either, so it all adds up, right? Oh God, I got to editing and realized I skipped a category. I skipped around. I was like, oh no. So we had in the waifu bracket, we had Wen Qing versus Mei Lin from Black Butler. Man, I've missed Modao Zushi, so seeing Wen Qing on this list made me really happy. And it has been eons, much like Code Geass, eons since I've read Black Butler. But Mei Lin, great choice for the waifus. But if we're talking about aesthetically pleasing, I mean, they're both beautiful. But we talked then about being a bad girl. Well, Wen Qing is with like the bad guy group of the series, so she kind of falls into that category quite handedly. And then Mei Lin, even though she's not necessarily a bad guy, she is working with CL and the others and kind of can take on that bad girl persona because, I mean, she's, you know, a sniper. So she fits it quite well. So then it comes down to like their heart. And honestly, both Wen Qing and Mei Lin have a good heart. They both try to protect the people that they care about, and their professions and their actions kind of are explained from the sense of duty that they have to protect those that they love. And so then it comes down to like the protection aspect, and yeah, they both kind of fit that criteria really well. So it's really hard to choose between them when, even though they're from totally different stories, they fit the category so well. So I had to leave it to Patreon, and Wen Qing, Mei Lin, I love you, but Wen Qing had more votes. So our girl Wen Qing, our favorite doctor, is going to move on and advance to the next round. So then we're on our final segment of the waifu bracket. We have Yor Briar, aka Yor Forger, and Sailor Pluto. Dang it! I really hoped the Sailor Scouts would have made it further this year. Sailor Pluto did pretty well last year, but this year, going up against Yor, I mean, neither Yor nor Sailor Pluto, we could say are bad girls, but Yor's a freaking assassin, so she has the bad girl edge, right? Both of them have good hearts. Both of them would literally do anything to protect the people they care about. Sailor Pluto would stop time and space. Yor would kill someone, go yandere on him. So literally it came down to Yor having more of a bad girl presence than Sailor Pluto. But if the shoe fits, right? So Yor advances on to the top 32. And then, yeah, Shilian's here. Shilian, and another familiar face made it onto the waifu bracket as well. Again, I feel bad because Shilian is up against Riko Ida. Riko from Kuroko's Basketball and Shilian from Heaven Official's Blessing. Shilian covers a lot of bases. It's gonna be interesting comparing them to other characters, but Shilian crosses a lot of borders in this one and has a bad girl persona, cares about others, wants to protect them. Riko is not a bad girl. She's just not. She cares about others and she would do things to protect them, even take them out of a basketball game, but she's not a bad girl. She doesn't have a dark past. She's second in her class. She's a scholarly student. She just doesn't have a bad girl genetic gene in her chromosomal system. So for that reason alone, sadly, Riko is not advancing and Shilian is to the top 32. So again, Neon Genesis, Masato makes it through, but our girl Akagi can't catch a break. She's up against Zhang Yanli from Modao Zushi. Now, Zhang Yanli, not a bad girl. No, she cares about others. She is willing to do anything to protect them, even if it means laying down her life. She's willing to do it. But Akagi has a bad girl persona, and she has a good heart, like Yanli. But would Akagi do anything to protect others around her? That's a really good question. She does things to protect herself, and does things that are kind of self-serving in the story, but does she really lay down the law to protect others? At least on an individual basis. Would she do that for her partner? I don't know if she would. And the fact that I have to question it when I know Yanli would is what makes Yanli go on to the next round. I love Ritsuko Akagi, but I just didn't think she was worthy to make the criteria to move forward. Now, this is the last double dipper of the brackets, but Reigen Arataka versus Cornelia from Code Geass. I really don't know if we'll have a Reigen sweep for either one or Shilian sweep. I don't know. But Reigen Arataka definitely, he took the cake in the Husbando round. He takes it over Cornelia here. Again, Cornelia gives him a run for his money. Both of them have like a bad girl persona. Both of them have a good heart and can protect others, but Reigen just has that popularity and tops out just a wee bit more. Now, this next round is Sasha Brous from Attack on Titan and Tamari from Naruto, our only Naruto character to make it on the bracket. Tamari and Sasha, I don't know if I would describe them as bad girls, but they definitely could be viewed that way. Like Sasha stealing potatoes, Tamari maybe a little bit like with her personality, but I will let it slide as far as that goes. But both of them have good hearts and they both go to great lengths to protect the people that they care about. So again, and I'm probably going to limit it to just these first couple of rounds, making Patreon be the tiebreaker. But for this one, I had to do it because I was like sitting there weighing their personalities versus what they've done in the series. And they're both not the main girl in the series, but they're side characters that get enough action to have to warrant being able to look up the plot surrounding them. So I ended up going with Sasha to take into our top 32 over Tamari and just see where that takes us. But then we have Ray from Ace of the Diamond versus Midnight from My Hero Academia, our two older ladies. I say older, Ray's in her 20s, so she's younger than me. But our two older characters in each of their respective series facing off against one another. Here's the thing. Ray and Midnight are take charge women. Very take charge. But neither of them are bad girls, or what I would describe as a bad girl. So that's kind of out. They both have a good heart. They both would do things to protect the people that they care about. So, and I would say that while Ray does not live in a superhero world where protecting others involves nearly the amount of stress that Midnight does, I do think Ray does her best to protect the players that she cares about on her team And I think that goes a long way for the world that story takes place in. So for me, I love Midnight and I love Ray. And I said the only fair way to do it without any bias on my part would be to let Patreon choose the winner. And so they did. And it was Ray. So Ray's going to advance on to the top 32 for our waifu bracket. Then we have Power from Chainsaw Man versus Mira Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist. Oof. This one's hard because I am anime only with Chainsaw Man. And that's the only reason I really think there is. I've read the manga and watched a series with Olivia Mira Armstrong, who both her and Power come across definitely with like bad girl vibes, like being a boss, having a bad girl persona. Both of them have well, here's the thing. Obviously, Mira has a good heart underneath it, and we find out she's willing to go to great lengths to protect the people she cares about, which would apply then to her partner. With Power, the problem with her character is we don't know enough about her heart to know if it is truly good. And then we don't know enough about her to know, would she really protect others around her or not, right? So it was really hard, and Power is one of my favorite characters in Chainsaw Man. So not letting her advance, again, this bracket just made me suffer. So I love Power, but I gotta give it to Mira Armstrong. She's got more of the complete package, especially for these criteria. She's gonna advance on to our top 32. And so that leaves our last round of the waifus. Toru Honda from Fruits Basket versus Korin from Yona of the Dawn. Now this one was a bit hard, but Toru Honda and Korin, both very kind characters that care a lot about the people surrounding them, that would do nearly anything to protect them. But the thing that separates Toru from Korin is, again, we had that criteria this round of the bad girl. And Korin just, even though she's a queen, she just has a bad girl vibe. She's like the queen that's the soldier that you don't want to mess with. Whereas Toru, there ain't a bad girl bone in that girl's body. She is the most innocent piece of powdered sugar in human form you have ever seen. And so, because bad girl is part of our criteria and Korin actually kind of fits it in a way, whereas Toru does not, sadly we have to have an upset. Toru is not advancing, but Korin will be to our top 32. So yeah, the waifus, like I said, were a much more concise choice. I felt like the waifus were easier to sort through this round because a lot of them either had the bad girl or didn't have the bad girl. I feel like I didn't have to go to Patreon as much with the waifus as I did the husbandos. But y'all, this round physically hurt. I was honestly like sick to my stomach when I first wrote out these options and who was making it and who wasn't. Because I wrote it out on notebook paper first just to like match up the criteria. And the more I did it and the further it got down, especially the husbandos, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And that's where we went. So, yep, it's not fun, y'all. But I hope I didn't make anyone too angry with my choices. But it's all in good fun, right? It's all in good fun. It's just subjective. I tried to make it as objective in choosing the winners as possible, but all I can say is Patreon, y'all made this bracket the way it was, and y'all have picked the criteria. So good news is we've gotten this bad girl criterion out of the way. Now next week, when we do the top 32 to our Sweet 16, we'll have 3 new criteria to judge on. So I kind of like the idea of doing new criteria each week. It's going to make things fresh. It's going to make things unpredictable and wild, and we'll just see how the cards fall. So thank you, fellow patrons, for helping me choose the nominations for this year's bracket. I hope you all have enjoyed this discussion about the top waifu and top husbando of 2023. There's been some upsets this round, so it's no holds bar who's going to advance and who's not at this point. Anything could happen. So we shall see. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I will be back next week with the top 32 to our Sweet 16 of the husbandos and waifus of 2023. Bye.